Good morning. Distinguished guests, friends and colleagues, my name is Chen Hao Chu. I'm one of the faculty members here at Graduate Institute of Linguistics, and I'm also serving as the Assistant Director of the Faculty Division of the Center for Bilingual Education here at NTU. And I would like to, on behalf of CBE, I would like to welcome you all to today's EMI seminar. And in today's event, we'll have a talk provided by Dr. Martyn Miller, who is now an Assistant Vice President for Global Engagement at Temple University. And the talk will then be followed by a dialogue between Dr. Miller and CBE, a panel discussion with delegates from NTU and our partner universities. And then finally, a Q&A session between everyone in this room. Now, please join me in welcome our Executive Vice President, Dr. Zhou, for the opening remarks.
Good morning. Our distinguished guests, Dr. Miller, Dr. Lu Jiafeng, Professor Lu Jiafeng from National Yangming Jiaotong University, and Professor Ophelia Huang Xiangling Laoshi from National Taipei Medical University, and all my colleagues from CBE, and all the professors, faculty members, and educators and students from NTU and some other universities. My name is Jiapei Zhou. 我是周嘉培, Executive Vice President of National Taiwan University and also the Director of the Center for Bilingual Education, in short we call it CBE, at National Taiwan University. On behalf of CBE, I'm delighted to welcome all of you to the 2022 EMI seminar. National Taiwan University has participated in the Ministry of Education's BEST program on bilingual education for students and became one of the 4 key cultivation universities. We then established the Center for Bilingual Education in 2021. CBE takes the lead in the developing and the implementing BEST policies and the supports related to EMI education, customized to NTU faculty, staff, and students. As CBE is dedicated to enhancing the professional development of educators, NTU recently also established the EMI Teaching and the Learning Center. And we hope the EMI TLC can provide cross-campus support and serve as a resource hub for all the partner institutions throughout the island. It's my great honor to stand here today, introducing our invited speaker, Dr. Martyn Miller, who is the current Assistant Vice President of the Office of Global Engagement at Temple University, and is the Fulbright Specialist who shares experiences and expertise with hosted institutions abroad. Dr. Miller is fluent in Arabic and English, so he really knows the bilingual meaning, and was raised in Syria and Lebanon. He received his PhD degree in the English literature from the University of Georgia in the United States in 1991. He has more than 20 years of experiences in leading language centers and the international affairs administration in higher education institutions in the United States. Today, he will talk about the topics of a strategic thinking from the West to Taiwan to promote an English-friendly environment in higher education. The second half of today's seminar will be expert dialogue, which will bring more experiences and ideas about the implementation of EMI in higher education, leading participants to reflect on the influences of bilingual policy in Taiwan. And I will be very happy to hear more participants to share your ideas or raise your questions about the topic that we are concentrated today. We hope that this seminar serves as a platform for all the participants to exchange ideas, consult with each other, and further bring bilingual education to a new era in Taiwan and even to the international communities. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you again to this seminar and wish you have a fruitful meeting today. Now I would like to take this great opportunity to welcome Dr. Martyn Miller on the stage. Let's give him the warmest welcome. Thank you. Thank you. And this is yours. Thank you.
First of all, good morning. And thank you all for coming to spend a few minutes with us to talk about this very, very important topic. Vice President Cho, thank you very much for the invitation and for the introduction. And to the CBE team, thank you for spending the past few weeks with me, and hopefully it will not be a waste of your time. And certainly I hope it's not a waste of anybody else's time. I'm supposed to be talking this morning about observations I have made about the EMI program, the bilingual program, based on conversations that I've had with students, with faculty, both at NTU and at other institutions. So some of you have heard some of this before. I hope it won't be too repetitive, but I have been adding comments and observations based literally on conversations with students. And I think that they are the reason we are all here. So I hope that what they are providing us truly is what we will take into consideration as we move forward on the project of EMI and bilingual education. So my talk really is comments, concerns, and insights on the EMI implementation. See if technology works. Here we go. So EMI, or bilingual, is based on the concept of having students familiar and fluent with two languages and providing education in two languages. Why is bilingual education important? As you can see on the screen here, bilingualism enhances divergent thinking, memory, reasoning, and problem-solving skills or abilities. It gives us an awareness and appreciation of different cultures, as well as flexibility, adaptability, and openness in attitudes. What you don't see in this statement is anything about language, other than the word bilingualism. There is so much more that we get from bilingualism than just learning two languages. In addition, in this time of globalization, nobody can deny that we are becoming more and more global. Language learning is more important. It is central to politics, to economics, to history, and in this context, of course, education. Language learning, however, is not an isolated task. It is not something that is done by itself. It is totally enmeshed with all of the important issues for the future of humanity. This is not an exaggeration. It truly is what ties us to all of humanity now. As important as language learning itself, I argue that intercultural competence is what we are truly seeking. Bilingualism is a way to get to intercultural competence. To read this, the development of language seems to have close bonds with the development of cross-culture competence and vice versa. Culture is expressed with language. However, it's not only language. So culture is expressed with language, and language is the tool. I use that word a lot the past few weeks. It's simply a tool by which any culture is represented. Thus, it seems inevitable that students of a foreign language need to develop their cross-cultural competence in order to fulfill their learning process. That one and the other are inseparable parts of the same puzzle. And none of them, or neither of them, can exist without the other. And this puzzle is the puzzle of humanity, if you will. There are so many different pieces to each of us than just the language we speak or the country that we're from. But again, those two cannot be separated. We also understand that we are in a competitive world. We are commonly human, if you will, but there are reasons for competition between us. So from a university's viewpoint, higher education institutions have to not only nurture talents with competitiveness within the global employment market in the future, but also allow the younger generation of Taiwan, and I would argue also the older generations of Taiwan, not just the younger, but allow the younger generation in Taiwan to gain a better global vision, to be able to understand different cultures in the international environment, and to be capable of communicating and interacting with people from different cultural backgrounds. This last piece is very important because it comes right from the BEST document. So the Ministry of Higher Education recognizes that the bilingual program is not simply one to learn languages, but it is also necessary that we have intercultural competence. However, I have a few concerns about the program, the way that's been described in the documents that have been provided to me and based, again, on my conversations with various people. So English language proficiency is measured in many different ways. What instruments are in place to measure faculty members' English proficiency and students' English proficiency? We see in the document that MOE puts out that they use the Common European Framework of Reference, or CEFR, to try to come up with language levels. But they don't say anything about how the faculty are actually measured. And so this is something that I think all of the institutions have to worry about, or think about, maybe not worry about. How are faculty found to be sufficiently bilingual, if you will, in order to teach in a bilingual environment? What is the true goal of bilingual education and the EMI programs? Is it the language or the content? All the KPIs that I have seen look at language. I don't see anything really built into the program to talk about how this will achieve better understanding of the content, of business, of chemistry, of physics, or whatever it is. I think that all the institutions who are participating in EMI need to think about that and need to focus themselves on the right goal. English language, earlier we said, is just a tool. Chinese is just a tool. That's not the goal. The content, I hope, the imparting of content is really the goal. I also have noticed that there's a very strong emphasis on subsidies and incentives. Subsidies and incentives. In other words, pay me more money and I will do it. Both for faculty and for students. Is that a good motivation? I know it is a motivation, but is it the right motivation? The implementation and the budget depends on leadership support at the national and local level. So if we're looking specifically at budgets or subsidies and incentives, are those funds going to continue to be available? What happens if the money becomes or stops? Will we continue to support an EMI or a bilingual program? This is rather scary because we know that money is transitory. It goes away eventually. There is also apparently on the MOE planning a dependence on international teaching personnel with overseas EMI teaching experience to advance the quality and performance for EMI courses implemented in the schools. That's what I'm here for. I'm here for money from the EMI. I'm one of these people. But the investment, again, we're talking financial, the investment in foreign faculty or foreign experts is, quite frankly, higher than an investment in a local faculty member. Can that be continued? Can that be sustained? Or, I would argue, should you be building the expertise here and making sure that your faculty here, rather than importing people, making sure that the faculty here are ready to teach and making sure the students here are ready to be taught in these foreign languages. COVID, over the past 2 years, has taught us that kids love online. And apparently other people are starting to fall in love with online. I'm not a young person anymore. I have not been online for most of my life. I am very worried that we're all becoming way too dependent on the online instruction. I had a conversation the other day with students, all of whom have graduated from universities in Taiwan. And I asked them, do you prefer online or do you prefer in person? And all of them said they prefer online. And I said, why? Or I asked why. And the response was, it is easier for us. We don't have to be in class. We can do the studies whenever and wherever we want. I've been teaching for over 35 years. I don't want to be talking to a computer, and I don't want my students to be talking back to a computer. So unless online is truly interactive, synchronous, not asynchronous, I am concerned that that's going to be a tool we're using too much. And then finally, cultural competence. Cultural competence. That one quote I read earlier from the BEST document is the only section in that document where cultural competence is mentioned. Everything else looks at just language, language, language. The KPIs are all about, can you pass CEFR B2? That's not bilingualism. Cultural competence is a much better way to demonstrate bilingualism. And so hopefully that becomes much more embedded in the programs as you move forward. And universities. Again, I've spoken at several universities already, and I'm seeing that their focus also is on language, not on cultural competence. That's where we need to go, I would suggest. So the success of the program depends on having teachers who are bilingual as well as students who are bilingual. So I'd like to show here examples of what bilingual teachers really are. And you'll notice this comes from Cambridge, which is the organization that you're using to judge or to qualify whether or not a student has been successful in this program. So bilingual teachers are confident in teaching their subject, again, subject, not language, confident in teaching their subject and engaging each student in the learning, not spouting knowledge, but engaging the student. Bilingual teachers are responsible for themselves, responsive to and respectful of others. A bilingual teacher is reflective as a learner himself and is interested in further developing the practice of teaching. A bilingual teacher is innovative and equipped for new and future challenges. I guess online is that new and future challenge, but I think that that's maybe where we should not be focusing. And then most importantly, a bilingual teacher is engaged intellectually, engaged professionally, engaged socially, and is ready to make a difference. I would argue that that difference should be a positive difference. Not only with the student, not only with the faculty member herself, but with the world as a whole. Do you believe that your faculty, whom you're asking to be bilingual teachers, do they share all of these characteristics? Do they demonstrate these characteristics? Not just at NTU, since you are my host, but everywhere, all of the schools participating in bilingual education. Can you say that your faculty that your faculty have all 5 of these characteristics? If not, then you need to find ways to do it. I'm also concerned about the effectiveness of setting a B2 CEFR level. Is that sufficient for a student to be called bilingual? By the same token, is it sufficient for a faculty member to be considered a bilingual faculty member? The B2 level is the 4th level. I start at A1 and go to C2. B2 is the 4th level. And even the people who wrote this, the people who wrote the definitions of the CEFR program, say that B2 is simply confident in everyday English. So you can walk around the streets, you can order a bubble tea, maybe in English. You can make sure that if you're a vegetarian like I am, there's no meat in the food. But does that mean that you are ready for an academic program? I think not. I think English C1, again, as defined by CEFR, is what you need to be able to advance, to function at an advanced level, function independently, and function in an academic setting. English level C2 is fluency. I don't think that we need to be seeking fluency in this program. That would be wonderful if you can get to that level, but it is not, I think, realistic. B2 is too low, C2 is probably too high, but why are we not looking for C1? The KPI says that we need B2, not by the point of admission to the university, but by the end of the first year of university. I would argue that B2 would be appropriate for admission into an EMI program, but that you seek C1 at least by the end of the first year, if you can get there. And again, I'm talking about faculty and students. Now let's look specifically at the C1. C1 says that the speaker can have an understanding of a wide range of demanding, longer texts and can recognize implicit meaning. It's very easy to recognize explicit because we know the words. We're listening to words. We know the content. We might be able to read a paragraph. But all of you know that your university students have to be looking at things longer than one paragraph or one sentence. They also are taking courses in many different subjects. It's not just one subject. So with the C1, your students might be ready for that wide range. At C1, a student can speak fluently and spontaneously without much obvious searching for expressions. One of the conversations I've had with students is, do you dream in English? For those of you who are language teachers, you would know that that's one of the definitions we set. If you can dream in a language, you're becoming fluent in that language. Another question, do you think in Chinese, translate, and then put it out in English? Except for one student, everyone I've spoken with says yes, that's what she does. She makes the sentence in English, and then she translates it, and then it comes out in, she makes the sentence in Chinese, translates it, and pulls it out in English. That is not a fluent student. The C1 student should be at the level where they're no longer translating, they're actually speaking. A C1 speaker doesn't need to stop and think. I mean, I'm stopping and thinking in English just because. But when I speak Arabic, for example, and as Vice President Cho said, I am said to be fluent in Arabic. When I speak in Arabic, I don't translate from English to Arabic and then say something. I do that in French, however, because my French is not good. My French is probably A1 or A2, let alone B1. So I do have to think in English and translate into French, but not with Arabic, and I hope not with English. The BEST and the NTU assessments, from what I've seen, both talk about having English at the end of, or having B2 by the end of year 1. But language experts will tell you that that's not sufficient. 1 year is not enough to become fluent. The best estimates are you need 5 to 10 years speaking in that foreign language before you are considered truly developed in that language. Now, how does that translate to your programs? You don't have your students for 5 to 10 years at your university. So what is my recommendation there? That you support English language teaching in your high schools, even in your middle schools. I'm not suggesting that every high school or middle school needs to become bilingual. That would be great if you could, but I know that's not realistic. But if you have more than 1 hour a week in English language classes in middle school, I think that would be helpful. More than 2 or 3 hours at the high school level. Should your students in middle school and high school be taking classes in English? If you want to achieve a truly bilingual island, of course. Because by the time you get to college, it's a little too late. Again, people who teach languages know the phrase fossilization. So when you teach language, and if you start at a late age, your brain has fossilized. The plasticity or the ability to speak languages becomes much harder. Again, I've been asked to speak about from my personal experience. So my wife and I, we speak Arabic at home. We have 3 children, and all of them understand Arabic to a certain extent. The older one, the oldest one of the 3, speaks 6 languages now. Why? Because when she was born, we spoke only Arabic at home. We were in the United States, but we spoke only Arabic at home. Somehow, magically, we're not sure how, at 2 years old, when her sister was born, she started speaking to her sister in English. So even though we were speaking Arabic at home exclusively, she was able to pick up English because we were in the United States, and so the environment was English speaking. She watched TV, she watched Sesame Street, what's a crazy Barney, whatever that was. Shows how old I am, okay? So she got English for means other than us, and it worked. However, when she went to school, she hated studying languages. She took French classes and hated it, literally, and so she stopped. But I just said she speaks 6 languages. How did she do that? by visiting and living for extended periods of time in 4 different countries. So she was in Brazil for 18 months. She learned Portuguese there. She went to Germany. She went to Holland. She went to Spain. And she speaks those languages now, not because she did it in the classroom, but she was immersed in those programs. And I know that that's going to be difficult here because you don't have 100% immersion in Taiwan in English. But you do have opportunities, and the only way to get that to happen is to start at the lower levels if you can. By the way, my 3rd child, he's a boy. He only speaks English. He understands a little Arabic, but only English. So how can you look at fixing, if you will, the faculty issues here? I've got a few examples from what we do at Temple. So we have extended pedagogy workshops. Of course, Temple is a very different model because we're doing everything in English there. But when the faculty come, we understand the international faculty. We have a significant number of international faculty. We understand that language, again, is simply a tool. What do they really need when they come to Temple? They need the pedagogy. And I think that's where TLC and other similar programs are going to be essential in making this successful at your universities. So TLC is Teaching and Learning Center, by the way, not Tender Loving Care. That's also important anyway. So pedagogy workshops, we have them at Temple. Every new faculty member is required to go into an orientation program, as I think that happens at all of your schools. But in addition to that, we provide a Provost's Teaching Academy, and we provide a conference on teaching excellence. All faculty are invited and encouraged to participate in that. Again, it's not language dependent, it's pedagogy dependent. We have peer teaching. So foreign faculty can teach with, if you will, a native speaker. Again, the focus there is not on the language, the focus is on how to teach in a U.S. environment, in a U.S. teaching environment. Very different from yours. But in order for this to be successful, I think that you need to do similar programs. You can have your Taiwanese native speakers with your international speakers. I know I said earlier that hiring international faculty is going to be cost prohibitive, but you do have them. I know every one of your universities has got foreign faculty. Do you bring them into the classroom with your Taiwanese faculty? Classroom observations. This is a conversation I have had over and over and over since the day I arrived here. Everybody seems to be scared of having their classes observed. But if you don't have objective and non-threatening observations, then your faculty are not going to be changing. Your faculty will be stuck in their ways, and they're not going to... Accepting critique is part of being a good faculty member, accepting criticism. I actually look forward to my students giving me criticism. I have not had the opportunity, actually, to have other faculty look at my teaching since I was a student at university 150 years ago. But I would encourage you all to do that. But the most important part there is the non-threatening. And I'm looking at you, Jen, now, because I know that's going to be your job. So, providing resources on teaching international students. In your case, providing resources on teaching the bilingual student. Because teaching a bilingual student should be similar to teaching an international student. Because that student has got a foreign language, if you will. And that's the greatest impediment when you're teaching the international student, is the language. So we have got opportunities. We offer sessions on how you teach students, how you teach international students. This session that I have the title here of Teaching International Students Abroad actually was based on COVID, because our international students, many of them left the United States, went back to their home countries, and so we had to start providing education online to the international student, which is slightly different from teaching the domestic student online. Credentials. I know you love credentials in Taiwan. So do have credentialing programs. Short-term workshops that all end up with a certificate. Long-term programs that end up with a certificate. It builds the faculty members' confidence that I actually was successful in this program. But it also teaches the administrators, or shows or demonstrates to the administrators that the faculty are learning more. So it's not just for the confidence of the faculty member, it's the confidence of the administration that you're actually doing something. And then I know that you also have teaching awards. Do you take those excellent teachers and use them to teach more? Do they become mentors? And again, we do that. So at Temple, our Center for the Advancement of Teaching, which is similar to your CTLD at NTU and other programs around the island, our center actually provides an informal opportunity for our great teachers. That's what they're called at Temple. We give them opportunities to have conversations with the new faculty or with faculty who are concerned about their own product. Then other issues. How do you make faculty aware of the international environment on their campus? We have a Global Temple Conference every year. We even did it during COVID. And this is sponsored by our office, the Office of Global Engagement, and the Faculty Senate. So it's not just our office doing it. And it encourages faculty to share their international experiences, and it gives the students an opportunity not only to learn from faculty about international experiences, but also to present their own. So the Global Temple Conference, we encourage students and faculty to give presentations. We have celebrations of international education, international activities all over campus. It's not just for the students, however. We want and we encourage faculty to participate. And more in the last 4 years, they are doing so. So I know that you have international programs on your own campuses. Do your faculty participate, or is that student-based only? And I would think you do have to get the faculty involved. It makes ownership, if you will. The Student Success Center, as most student programs, have tutors. But ours goes beyond that. The tutors are available not only to the students, but also to the faculty. And this, I think, again, in an informal setting, makes it much more comfortable for the faculty to participate. And then writing and research retreats, weekend-long retreats, offered by the Student Success Center, but for the faculty, are available. The only problem with this is there's an additional cost. So you have to have your departments willing to pay to have the faculty participate, if they're willing to do that. So include EMI in your tenure and promotion portfolios. I know that some of the schools actually do it, but I also know other schools don't do it. Faculty are scared until they have tenure. How do you encourage them during the early part of their career to participate in bilingual? You do so by putting it in their promotion. Not blaming them if they don't do so, but rewarding them if they do so. So don't make it a negative, but only make it a positive. Psychologists, of course, will tell us positive reinforcement is much better than negative reinforcement. Carrot versus the stick, blah, blah, blah. Do that. Award them, reward them, and encourage them to participate in EMI and in international activities. Do you have data that show how well students do in the same content in a CMI program as they do in an EMI program? Where I think we'll be talking a little bit more about this later. But this is exceptionally important, again, for the faculty members' own confidence. If they say, my students are not going to do well, then I'm not going to do it an EMI class. You have to show them that's not the case. However, I have had conversations with students who told me, point blank, that their CMI counterparts learned more content than they did in the EMI. Same degree programs, exactly. So the ones I was talking about, one was an accounting student, one was a finance student. Throughout their programs, they went back to their students in the same academic program, and they learned that the CMI students were getting more content than the EMI student. That is an indication to me that the faculty are more concerned about English than about the content. And that is wrong, quite frankly. That is counterproductive to the whole concept of a bilingual program. But if you can get data that show that the students are actually learning the same, then that alleviates a lot of that concern. Case studies and data on professional success after graduation, not only in the classroom, but who is making more money at the end? The student who is fluent in English or the student who is monolingual? I think that you're going to see that the answer is the bilingual student, the trilingual student will probably be more successful at the end. But we can say that as much as we want. Without data, it means nothing. So if you can get those data, provide them to the faculty, I think that you're going to have a little bit less fear on the part of the faculty. Economic impact. I know that one of the goals of the BEST program is to encourage international students to come to Taiwan. But the faculty might say, that's not a goal of mine. If you show, however, that the economic impact is positive on the island or positive in your institution, then maybe the faculty will begin to look differently. In the United States, the Association of International Educators partners with the Institute for International Education every year on demonstrating economic impact. So there are tools, you have now, some of you, I can provide them if you want, on how to measure economic impact. In the US alone, this year, international students contributed $36 billion to the economy by coming to the United States. Before COVID, that had gotten to $43 billion. So COVID reduced the number of students and automatically reduced the amount of financial impact. Why is this important? Not only for your faculty, but much more importantly for your government. If the government sees the new money coming into the island, then they are going to be much more supportive of the bilingual and international education. And then partnerships with industry. I know that some of your institutions partner with industry, you provide opportunities for internships and other similar things. But the industry also needs to see the positive impact of international education or bilingual education that they can realize from partnering with you. So money, jobs, very important to make this successful. We at Temple have provided or created a curriculum specifically to help faculty improve their language skills. I'm not going to go through all of this. It's just an example of what we do, because I want you to notice that the language is not the goal here. We're assuming that the faculty have a minimum level of language. If you look at these course descriptions, you'll see much more is based on the pedagogy. Much more is based on how you can help the students academically. Again, English is not the goal necessarily. The faculty becoming more familiar, more at ease, more fluent with the language is an ancillary benefit. The primary benefit is teaching them how to teach more effectively in a language other than their first language, or in the United States, in an educational environment other than the one they're most familiar with. One of the questions I was asked is, how do we address student language proficiency? How do we make our students better English speakers? So I'm just going to give you a few examples here. The Center for American Language and Culture, we have an intensive program. This is where students are there for a long period of time, 1 year, sometimes up to 2 years. But the goal for that is getting your students to learn English, not necessarily to learn language. The others are much more important. Conditional admission program. I don't know if this is a model that you could have at NTU or any other institution, but admitting students based on their language, on their content knowledge, so based on their transcripts and all that from their high schools. But going beyond that, giving them an opportunity to become more prepared in the language. So students can get admitted to Temple through the conditional admission program, but they have to spend 1 semester in the language program. At the same time as taking language, they're also beginning content. So there's a very big difference between intensive English and a conditional admission program. We have short-term programs. These are all, to a certain extent, based on culture, again, rather than language. Again, the name of our program is the Center for American Language and Culture. It's not American language. I understand, by the way, that that's a jingoistic term, and it's also very US-centric, like American language and culture. But students seem to be responding to it. American culture at Temple has been one of our most successful short-term programs because students are looking for the cultural knowledge. Graduate Access Temple is similar to our conditional admission program, but it takes place 1 month immediately prior to the beginning of the semester. So students have sufficient language to be admitted, but their departments maybe don't think that they're really, really ready. So they ask them to participate in this 1 month pre-semester program. And we have data that show that students who complete the Graduate Access Temple 1 month program are more successful in their academic programs than students who are directly admitted and do not spend that 1 month. Again, we're focusing in that program more on the culture and the pedagogy of the U.S. education system than we are in English language. And of course, because of COVID, we did create a couple of online programs. They're relatively successful, but again, as I said, I'm an old man and I have a problem with online and as a whole. Not only the students who are prior to admission or prior to beginning, but we also have opportunities for the degree program students. And I would suggest that you try to figure out how your bilingual students coming in purposely for the EMI can do things like this. A 2-day intensive orientation. I don't know if you have orientation programs for new students, but the new student for the EMI might be slightly different from the new student for the monolanguage or for the CMI. International teaching assistant programs. I do know that you are working on helping your teaching assistants. But are you focusing, again, on the pedagogy there, or is it more becoming more familiar with English? Student leadership. Do you make sure that all of your EMI students participate in exactly the same kinds of programs that your CMI students do? Do you intentionally provide leadership opportunities for the EMI students to participate on campus? Student Success Center, I spoke very quickly about that earlier. Some examples here, academic coaching is available, language tables and conversation partners. I know that at NTU, you're creating opportunities for students to speak with other students in English. However, all of those students, once they leave those English corners or whatever they're called, then they go back into the purely Chinese environment. How do you make sure that that English is practiced outside of those crafted, created programs? And then you can see others. And then finally, extracurricular opportunities for students, for interactions. Once they leave the classroom, if they're not speaking English outside of the classroom, then what's the point? How are they going to get that immersion? How will they become bilingual? A few examples of other bilingual systems. The IB program, international program, is offered throughout the world. Most of the institutions that I have been to, and I've been visiting high schools for 20 or 30 years now around the world, all of the IB programs, the focus is on English, again, as the language of instruction. So look at IB programs. The GCSE, I can't even say it when I'm looking at it, or the IGCSE, are both programs offered by English-speaking countries, India, Australia, New Zealand. It comes out of England primarily. These are also, again, English-based programs at the schools that I visit, but they're in foreign countries. They are in non-English dominant countries. American high schools are all over the world now. The DP, the diploma program, preparing students specifically for admission to universities in the United States. These are exclusively English language programs. The reason I'm putting these up here is that all of the students I'm seeing in these programs have a very high level of English language fluency. They're living in their countries. I saw this all over the Middle East. I saw this in India. We see it in South America. But the students come out speaking English because, again, the language of instruction is English. And interestingly enough, when they go home, their parents are speaking to them in English also, because the parents are part of the successful student. They remember that their students are studying in English, they have to keep going in English. The best, I would suggest, school system that's bilingual is Canada. Almost everybody in Canada speaks English and French because it's in their high schools, it's in their middle schools, it's in their elementary schools, and it is around the country. So until you get that far down, you're not going to be, I would suggest, as successful as these other programs. And then finally, bilingual high schools in Taiwan. They exist. They are intentionally bilingual, but MOE is also putting money into creating bilingual programs in high schools here. I think the current target is 60, and the future target is 200. That would be helpful for you also. University level, American University of, and then fill in the blank, is all over the world, mostly in the Middle East, of course. My institution was American University of Beirut. It was founded in 1886, at which time the English was not spoken in Lebanon. Now, most Lebanese speak both English and Arabic, and then a large majority of them also throw in French. At AUB, we never spoke Arabic in class unless we were taking an Arabic class. But outside of the campus, everything is Arabic. The students were successful because, again, that the university is intentional in keeping everything in English. And again, the students have the opportunity to be outside and still speak English. Temple University has offered a rule of law master's program at Tsinghua University in Beijing. We've done it since 1991. It is not in Chinese. It is in English. The only immersion, if you will, the students come to Temple for one summer in a one-year program. So they get an opportunity to be in an English language environment, but the rest of it is in Chinese. How is it successful? The faculty are teaching in English. They are American faculty, so to speak, but it is located outside of the United States. Duke University Kunshan, New York University Shanghai, both of them are offering, again, bilingual programs, or not bilingual, monolingual programs, but in a foreign country. And the oldest one in China, I thought it was, and other people have confirmed that, is a British university, University of Nottingham in Ningbo. So look at these other institutions that have done it successfully. Why not copy what other people did? We're not here to reinvent the wheel, after all. And then finally, why do students need to become bilingual? Why do your institutions need to be bilingual? This is what it is in the end. I started with competitiveness, right? And how do you measure competitiveness? NTDs. Very simple. And then most important about this little picture here, actually it's big for you, right? What is in the center of the picture? What's in the center of the whole NTD $1,000? The world. The world is there. And that's what I think that you need to be focusing on. How can bilingualism contribute to the competitiveness, the global competitiveness of all of you? Thank you very much. We're done.
Thank you, Martin. It's been very inspirational. And as always, after your talk and whenever I chat with you, I always have a lot of inspiration and a lot of thoughts, and I really appreciate that. So for the following 10 to 12 minutes-ish, you and I will be dialoguing, and I will appreciate if we can have more elaboration on the slides and the thoughts suggestions you just provided. So really, EMI, when we talked about globalization or internationalization, apart from EMI implementation in higher education like NTU or other universities, internationalization can be achieved by way of globalizing those those local professionals, and also localizing those international experts. Whereas I think EMI implementation at this point is focusing more on the globalizing the local students or local professionals. What kind of strategies, what kind of suggestions you will have for us to localize those international experts? What's your take on that?
So I have been in Taiwan now for 5 weeks. On Saturday, somebody saw me and he said, "You are local now." And I said, "No, I'm not local because I don't speak Chinese. How can I be local?" And I think it is more because I am willing, and I hope that other people are willing to understand the Taiwanese culture, not the Chinese language.
Right.
I know 5 words in Chinese, maybe, but I am able to get around. Yep. I am able to, I hope, not get lost too much, both physically and culturally, because I am aware of, I am attuned to the other people's actions. Mm-hmm. So I think that localizing your global staff will depend on your ability to make them comfortable. Mm-hmm. Not teach them Chinese, right, but give them, excuse me for a silly expression, give them an easy card. Tell them to get on the train themselves. Right. Tell them to get lost. Right. And that's what happens. I believe that I am bicultural or multicultural, not because of the languages that I speak, but because of the experiences that I've had over my life that have made me what I would call, or what other people call, tolerant to ambiguity. Right. I am not scared of something that is the first time. Right. Oh, no, I can't say that. I do get scared the first time. But once I've gone through it, at least once, I've become much more comfortable. And that's what I think that you have to do with your international guests, is to give them an opportunity to get scared. Give them an opportunity to get lost, but give them the opportunity by themselves. Right. I think the first time I got an MRT, I was with somebody else. But the second time I was alone, and every other time I'm alone. But that experience and forcing them to do that. You have a lot of international students on your campus. Yeah. I have not seen them walking around only with Taiwanese student. They walk around by themselves. They have become successful by facing that fear and by overcoming the fear.
That's interesting because when you're talking about putting that outside in the outside world, that means the EMI classrooms might not be as helpful as we intended. So how does that going to work if we want to have this kind of EMI implementation, while as within EMI classrooms, we can also localize those global talents?
Because education does not only happen in the classroom.
There you go.
You get the content in the classroom, but that's all you get in the classroom.
Yeah. So my follow-up question for that is actually, as I wrote down here, early on you talked about the cultural competence needs to be addressed. So when we think about EMI, when we think about embedding all these cultural issues in EMI classrooms, whether or not this cultural competence can be explicitly taught in classroom, or it actually can be shown implicitly outside the classroom. More generally, I'm asking, do you think this is a responsibility of the universities, or this is actually the built-up atmosphere in the society?
I think it is the responsibility of the island, not the university. The content is what's going to come in the classroom.
Right.
And your teachers should be focusing on the content.
Right.
And as I said earlier, language is just a tool.
Right.
The classroom, they're here to learn about business. They're here to learn about chemistry, physics. That's what they come to your campus for. But a successful study abroad student will learn a lot more from outside of the classroom. So I would not focus. Again, as I was showing in one of the slides, our internationalization happens outside of the classroom much more than it happens inside the classroom.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Let me look at the time. I still have a few minutes, but I would like to follow up a little bit on this. So you also mentioned about the capabilities or the role for the EMI teachers, instructors you have. For example, they should be confident about their subject, and they should be responsive, they should be responsible and respectful, and engaged and ready for change or to make differences. Now, when they start to make the change, what are the corresponding strategies you would give for the policymakers? Say, for example, the other day we were talking about this, lecture hours. Here at NTU, we have 3 hours of lectures. And I believe this is not the case for most of the schools outside the island. And if an EMI instructor is starting to make the change for their teaching, for their pedagogy, say, for example, fragmentizing the materials, bite-size of learning, this seems to be working for 1 hour lecture and not working for 3 hour lectures. So from this top-down kind of authority, this is coming from the university, what would be your suggestions on that? And also, what kind of expectation we should provide for the students? What kind of mentality we should prepare them for?
I am calling for, excuse the expression, a cultural revolution on your campuses. The idea of 3 hours, 1 day a week seems to me to be counterproductive to having a truly successful education environment. When you are able to interact with your faculty 3 days a week, 1 hour a day, for example, which is the US system, or an hour and a half, 2 days a week, that interaction is going to be much more positive both for the student and for the faculty member. Right. So yes, what I'm suggesting is a huge change. Right. Can it happen? That's up to you all. But until the faculty begin to see the educational experience differently, then not much is going to change. The faculty, and I know this is a very traditional way of thinking, but the faculty here seem to be, I am the expert. If you listen to me for 3 hours, I will give you the knowledge, you go memorize the knowledge, and then you give it back to me exactly as I gave it to you. That is not a success. Again, in my opinion, that is, I would suggest, not as successful as truly engaging. And the one part of that quote that you reminded me of, responsive to and respectful of. Right. I don't know if faculty truly are responsive to and respectful of their students. And this is not unique to Taiwan, by the way, at all. Please don't take that. Yep. That happens everywhere. Yep. Our faculty are also imparters of knowledge. Right. I've had fights with faculty when I say, why don't you think about the student? And they say, because the student doesn't know anything. No, the student knows so much.
They do.
The student, and when we are able to learn from the student, then we become better faculty.
Thank you. And I also believe that if we want to make this kind of changes, faculty alone might not do the job. So we really need the students to be on board at the same time. So my follow-up question for that is, how do we prepare students this kind of mentality when the faculty members try to make the change? Now we're going to break the 3 hours lectures into 3 one-hour lectures in a week. And then how can they be prepared for that? What's your suggestions?
I think that's when you need your international students to come here and show them how successful the different models can be. It is top-down, very much top-down education system, but the students need to be reminded that they are not just passive learners, but that they are active participants in the educational enterprise. And I frankly don't know how to get that to happen other than having the faculty continue to reinforce that we are partners in this. I have been fortunate to teach classes in Taiwan. It was online, but still I was teaching students in Taiwan. It was a monocultural class. I was the only American. They were all, Taiwanese students. And my role is not to impart information or not to impart knowledge, but to teach them how to be better students of the world, not just in the topic that I was teaching them. And I found that when they came to the United States after those classes, they were ready to engage. Not to sit in a class, but to engage in the class. So just give them the opportunities and remind them that they are the real learners here and that learning is a two-way street, not just I'm the faculty, I know everything, listen to me.
Yeah.
So be honest with your students.
Yes.
I don't know if, that's probably the hardest thing, be honest with your students.
Yeah. And open to their questions and their challenges as well.
And their critiques of you.
Yeah.
We talked earlier about these silly teaching evaluations. I have heard teachers say, I don't want to teach an EMI class because my students are going to grade me lower. And it happens, yes.
It happened to me.
Yeah. But I also heard from you and from another faculty member that once you did it once and once you took the comments into consideration, your evaluation started to go back up again.
Right.
And it's not, you're not here to get a better evaluation. You're here to ensure the student has a better learning environment.
Right. Right. So speaking of students and taking their needs into considerations, a lot of times when faculty go into this scenario with EMI classrooms, we are sort of like, focusing on the subject, focus on the content we're looking at, and a lot of time we're actually ignoring their needs. And this might be quite common because a lot of faculty members, they probably prioritize their research, especially in this, research-oriented universities like NTU. And how do we call for their needs? They're sitting on or, putting themselves in students' shoes. How is that going to happen? How do we motivate them?
We need to remind faculty that they are students also.
Right.
And this is something that...
But it's not in their promotion package, though.
But it should be. I mean, I said earlier, put EMI or international experiences in their promotion packet. Put less weight on the
research
evaluation. Oh, no. I mean, Temple is a Research One institution also, so there's no way I can suggest that you have less weight on research. But you must, sorry about that, but I would think that you have to make them more equal.
Right.
So bring up not student evaluations, but student learning, student outcomes. Can you measure that in a teaching, in a promotion portfolio?
Right.
And again, going back to one of the suggestions I had before, provide data. A specific example is compare, again, you and I have talked about this in another setting, compare the professional outcome, or the content outcome. So if you have a student taking accounting in a CMI program and another student taking accounting in the EMI program, are there tools to prove that they have both learned the same content? I don't think you have them yet, but I think that you're starting to develop them.
Right. Yeah.
And that again allows the faculty member to say, oh, that's right. Content is what I'm here for. I'm here for the student. I'm not here just for my promotion and tenure packet.
Yeah. Thank you. So my next question would be more like an umbrella, more like big questions for this. So we talked about best projects, and you actually I'm sure you read it through like from cover to cover, even pinpoint about the culture issue. Where do you see the opportunity of BEST program? And by that specifically, I would like to invite you to share your experience and your thoughts on, over the past months, your observation on NTU and on other partner universities. What are our strengths and weaknesses? Where are our opportunities and threats? From your experiences from Middle East, Pan Asia, or back in the United States, how can we compare with other universities in the world?
I would say from a research perspective, there's no problem at all.
Okay.
You are all, I know that you are meeting the same research requirements that the rest of us are. Taiwanese faculty are involved in professional conferences everywhere. I think I had a couple of meetings canceled because people had to travel internationally.
Right.
So that's that's I think one of your greatest strengths is the focus on research. The weakness is the same thing, the focus on research.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse the word, but the failure to recognize the importance of the student.
Right.
And so once you recognize that the student, it's the same thing,
Yep.
same theme I'm
Yep.
using over and over and over.
Yep.
Once you recognize that the student is an equal participant in the educational endeavor as a whole, that's where you get that respect for or responsiveness to the student. Research in and of itself, means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point of having 6,000 research papers on your CV if you are not having the students share in that? So how much do you allow students to participate in the research?
Right.
First author in any science program is the most important thing. Are your students first authors
Mm-hmm.
of anything? I don't know. I'll ask you, do you have any first authors who are
Yes.
students? There we go. You think that's common?
Common in my area, probably, but I don't know if it's common in other disciplines. Yeah.
So that, to me, would be a weakness, if you will, is
Yeah.
not engaging the student as an
Right.
equal participant.
Yeah.
Opportunities, you have boundless opportunities here.
Mm.
That NTD slide, that's a huge opportunity. Because the money is going to come not only to the student at the end, but it also comes to the universities.
Right.
The economic impact of having better students is measurable.
Mm-hmm.
I said earlier it's immeasurable, but it's also measurable. So use those data to show them. And then threats, I'm sorry to say this, but I love the quote, "You cannot pay me enough money to take the Chinese out of me." That's your threat.
Yeah.
The faculty who are opposed to EMI, but I think they're opposed to EMI or bilingual for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
They see that as getting rid of China, getting rid of the Chinese part of them. That's not what EMI is about. I don't see that anywhere.
Right.
So overcoming that fear that you are trying to make it a non-Taiwanese island. No, it will always be Taiwan.
Right.
The Chinese mindset will always be here because that's what you are. But remind people that that's not the goal of EMI.
Right. Yeah. Thank you very much. For the interest of time, I think we have to stop the dialogue for now, but we'll continue with the panel discussion right here. So thank you once again. Now, this is the panel session, and this is how we're going to work. After I introduce all the members, delegates on the stage, and then we will start with all the questions for each delegate. And after that, I also have a follow-up questions for Martin, so then we can have all discussion all together. And then we're more than welcome to have your questions and comments afterwards. So if I may, I would like to start off introducing our delegates from our partner universities. Maybe I should start with the one next to me, Dr. Huang from Taipei Medical Universities. And we also have Dr. Liu from National Yangming Jiaotong University. And we also have the Dr. Cai from our NTU. Okay, so shall I start? Can I? Okay, so thank you everybody for coming out and have this conversation with us and share with our audience here today. So I have a few questions, if I may, to invite all of you to answer them. So the first one is, please introduce how your university is promoting bilingual education and building an English-friendly or EMI-ready campus, or how is your university preparing for future development with regards to bilingual policy implementation?
So I know you're against money as incentive. First, I would say TMU definitely we encourage teachers and students both with money incentive and also honor. So we offer teachers like one course you can have 40 to 60,000 NT dollars one course, and even we are introducing a new policy because we know from CMI to EMI there will be a difficult transition, and you need to prepare for your new curriculum and new pedagogical skills. So if teachers, they are willing to use EMI like for 6 weeks, only 6 weeks, then we pay you money as incentives. And also we add EMI to our faculty promotion, and also we have best EMI teacher award, and also we have extra credits to teacher excellency. Yes, thank you. So both money and honor. So, and also we pay students if you're willing to take EMI courses. Okay. So I'm wondering and I'm suffering like, what can we do more to positively encourage our teachers and students? And definitely, that's my first question. Yes, Martin.
Okay, so I think I should start by introducing our the policy or the strategy in our university. So anyway, I think right now bilingual education is kind of the goal of our government, or even the goal for our island. But to be very honest, EMI is just one of the strategy. I think Martin definitely agree at this point. So bilingual education is aimed with a goal to actually provide something different compared to what we already have in our campus. So basically, EMI course is something that we can have in the classroom. But what we can do more for our not only faculties, but also students in our campus. I think this is the current goal of our university. So basically, EMI class, but we try to have several different events, activities, or even accreditation for our faculties. So we do have the intensive training program for our faculty for their development, such as the pedagogy issue or even the English proficiency. And for our student, we do have several different opportunities like the English chat hour, or I think we try to flip. We do know the flip the classroom. But we try to do something more like the flip stage. We encourage all our students to have their original activity, like the Christmas party. We all have the department night, but now we encourage all our students to hold or to have this kind of event through English. And now the host would be the students, the audience would be the teacher. So right now, teacher can really see that a student can use English, can embrace English. So teachers would hold this kind of the excuse, I have to say that a student would have the resistance to this kind of the EMI class, bilingual environment or something. This is the very first thing that we invite our student as the partner to really make the bilingual education or bilingual environment come true in our campus. And another thing is, I totally agree with what Martin just mentioned about invite the industry as the partner. I think the incentive, the money, or even increased lecture hour for our teachers is just kind of the initial strategy, or I don't know, something that they can get right now, but this is not the long-term strategy that we can apply. So in fact, industry to our campus, for example, my department is focused on medical imaging. So everyone heard MRI, CT, or something there. But behind this, we do have several huge international companies like no, I cannot say the company name right here. Anyway, but we do have a lot of companies, so we invite them as a partner. So the manager, okay, the vice president of these companies would tell us, our students, that you need to equip yourself, not only the bilingual ability, but also you need to appreciate intercultural, many different aspects. So now, student has the motivation. Student will seek for the opportunity to equip themselves. So EMI become something students want. So anyway, I think this is so-called flipped stage or flipped idea. we don't really need to deliver EMI and beg or ask our students to take the course, but students should be aware of that they really need these kind of things. So I think to build out a successful bilingual environment in our campus, we try to do something like this, to really build out the mentality of all the faculty and students. So I think this is the key. Anyway, so if it is possible, I really want Martyn can share lots of the examples that you heard or maybe in your university, how can really make this kind of the increase of the motivation happened. I think they are definitely a very good strategy from your university. So that should be all now.
Thank you. And on behalf of CBE, I should take over this question, even though I just proposed the question myself. But I'm in charge of the whole thing. So I would take this opportunity to introduce CBE a little bit more in details. So CBE here at NTU, we have 3 different divisions. The first one is the planning division, which is responsible for the campus-wide kind of planning, administrative planning, and we also set up all this full EMI undergrad programs, full EMI bachelor programs, and we also have providing different kind of services, different kind of subsidies for the departments, for the faculties to apply for. And we also have student divisions, which is in charge of all the kind of student activities to help with their English proficiency, to elevate their exposure, to have more exposure in English, both inside and outside the classroom. They have in-class preparation, they have outside curriculum activities, etc. And we also have faculty division, which we also have a lot of seminars, workshops, and different kind of enhancement courses, both online and in person. And we're also starting to have this classroom observation services from this semester. We also provide different matching services between instructors as well as the TAs. And also the training between the TAs. And starting from this September, we also have this Teaching Learning Center, EMI Teaching and Learning Center, TLC, led by Wan Zhen 老师. And this is actually the center that is connecting NTU with other partner universities. We want to share our experiences and what have we been doing over the past 18 months or so. And we want to share our knowledge and want to share our know-how, and definitely also want to learn from other universities, see what's their merits, what is their strength. We also want to learn from them. So I also have a question for Martyn, is that over the past 5 weeks here at NTU and also visiting with our partner universities, considering different traits and different strengths or different kind of strong suits of all these universities, what's your suggestions for us if we want to somehow, personalize or customize having this campus-wide or, college-wide kind of EMI implementation? What's your suggestion on that? Thank you.
First, I would like to respond to Professor Wong about money. Yeah. I don't hate money. It's not money that I don't like. It is the focus on using money as the sole, so far, motivation for the faculty. As I gave in my talk, and during the Q&A period with Chen Hao, there's so much more that the faculty can gain than just the money. So I understand, again, as you were saying, money is the initial method, but it should not be the ultimate goal. Yeah. As far as how you can make your campuses more friendly, if you will, there's a very simple, expensive, but simple illustration of how friendly you are to English, and that's by making all the signage available. I said earlier that I'm very comfortable with traveling in MRT alone, but that's probably because every MRT station is purely bilingual on the signs. On the signs. Now, if I walk up to the kiosk and I ask the staff member for something, she's not going to be able to answer, but at least I can look at a sign. So I do know that at NTU you have a project, I think in collaboration with OIA, to make sure every sign is in English and in Chinese. So that begins to make it feel much more friendly. I also know that OIA at NTU has, OIA is the Office of International Affairs, by the way, sorry. They have a goal of ensuring that every office have at least one person who speaks English. So if your international student walks into the bursar's office, the cashier, for example, or if your Taiwanese student who wants to continue practicing English walks up to the bursar's office or the cashier's office, they can ask in English and have somebody answer. So it's just that the campuses need to make sure that if you're promoting a bilingual environment, that you actually are a bilingual environment. Lip service to bilingualism is not going to get you there. But if you can prove it by putting your money where your mouth is, as the expression is in English, going back to money. So making your campuses English friendly, not only by signage, but also by staff. That's probably the easiest way to make that. And then I loved your idea, Professor Liu, about having all of your activities, the same activities, so you're not changing the culture, but you're having activities available in English. Again, authentic opportunities for people to practice English. In the classroom is one thing, but outside of the classroom is probably more important. I don't know, Chen, how that addresses the...
So maybe I will give a follow-up comment on this issue. So basically, what NTU is doing is kind of like combination between combination of the partners universities. So we try to, if I may say, we try to brainwash the students or brainwash our faculty members. So environment, I think, is very important to promote the bilingual system working. So, but this takes a lot of effort. So at NTU, we actually incorporate a lot of different departments. For example, the Office of Academic Affairs, the Center of Common Core Education, the Academic Writing Center, that use the EMI as a tool for the student part or for the TA training. And then, of course, we also have the Office of International Affairs or Teacher and Learning Development Center together with the CBE, so that we can sort of like brainwash, always try to convince our faculty member that this part is important and provide the needs whenever and whatever they need as a teaching or learning process. But also, like Director Liu just mentioned, we also try to engage the EMI into the student's life. So try to cooperate or try to work with Office of Student Affairs or different colleges, and then also work with the student groups when they hold their activities. And then we can sponsor them with a certain, I mean, everyone loves money, of course, to sponsor them that if they would like to hold this activity or student group activity in English, then we can give them some support financially. So through different strategies or through different kinds of approaches, I think from the faculty part, from the student part, as well as for the TA, maybe I will mention that later. So then we will be able to promote, not really like build up very quickly, but to promote the EMI environment as soon as we can. So that's my follow-up comments.
So my second questions for everybody would be, what are the EMI faculty compositions at your universities? And does the number of faculty number reflect the number of EMI courses? And also, how does the students' English proficiency distribute? Does these numbers describe the EMI readiness at your universities? If I may, maybe I should start with Dr. Liu at this time.
So you mentioned about the number of the EMI instructors. I have to say it's not pretty for now. But I may say this may not be the key, because all we know, the ugly truth is not all of the teachers would say yes to EMI. And the ugly truth is so far not all the students would say yes to EMI. So what we are doing right now, we need the seats. The seats may be the people, I mean the faculty, who is willing to be an effective bilingual teachers. I think this is very important. So we do have several different training programs. For example, in Jiao Tong Yangming University, we do have a center called High Education Accreditation for Teaching Center. Actually, we collaborated with an English organization, Advance AG. And for the past 5 years, this center has already cultivated, actually trained over 120 teachers based in 17 different colleges in our university to get the fellowship or senior fellowship of this advanced HE. And for this kind of training, again, we focus on pedagogy, not English proficiency. But I can tell, even for this huge university, even we only have this 120 teachers to actually dedicate to this kind of training and program, this means they are the seats. They are the very important seats. And actually, they are located in 17 different colleges. So in our university, we have like 29 colleges. But at least we have 17 colleges have this kind of the seats. The hope, the seat of the hope, I have to say. So actually, the real number, I think this is not a big issue, but we need the starting point. And these seats are that important, and I have to say, they are all willing to do more, not only for the strategy or policy from our government, but really, like what you say, really care our student, or really say something true or be honest to our student that I know you don't like our class, because this is boring. Because what we did mostly is purely lecture-based. Lecture-based course. That means I speak, you listen. And this is, I have to say, very, very ineffective, because only like 30%, there is a research, right? Only 30% of the knowledge can really deliver to the students. So I think a group of the teachers, faculties in our campus, not only because of the EMI, but they really know that we need to do something different. We need to change the current environment. So I think the bilingual education is kind of the opportunity, or EMI itself is kind of an opportunity to remind us we need to do something different. So anyway, we can definitely give you the number of how many courses. For example, 14%. I think in average for all the colleges in our university, it's more like the 14% of the course can be delivered in EMI, in English. But I have to say, who is the good EMI teacher? Who is the good bilingual teachers? They definitely need to go through intensive, for example, 60 hours, 12 days, 3 modules, and you need to submit a 3,000 to 6,000 essay to get this kind of fellowship. That means this teacher really want to do something different. So we really try to identify and cultivate, support these kind of teachers. But most importantly, we need to let our students know that we are willing, we are more than willing to change our environment. So we need a student as the partner. We need the industry as the partner, because they will tell not only students, but also the faculty why we need change. And this kind of thing can reflect to our government. So here's my answer. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Can I have a quick question for that? So how do you spread the words among the students? You know, when those seated instructors or EMI teachers, they become more, innovative in terms of their pedagogy. Do the students start to spread the words? You should take this course, you should take this EMI teacher's course, and then how does that work? Is there any kind of platform or any opportunities?
I have to say, yes, we need to build out a platform, but that is ongoing right now. We don't have that much money to support this right now. But I have to say, advertisement or some promotion is pretty important. And I have to say, students are very, very smart. They know how to ask. For example, hey, Martin, do you like that course? I don't think that course is good enough, right? It's terrible. So students will spread this information, I have to say, spontaneously. So, but we have to promote, we have to highlight, just like what you mentioned, we need to give the award to this kind of the good teacher.
Right.
So we need to set up some stage for these kind of teachers. And we need this kind of the effect to actually spread out in our campus. So this is a goal, but it is still ongoing. So I cannot claim loudly to say we have done something, but it is ongoing. Okay.
Thank you. We're also working on that too.
Yeah.
So next one, can we invite Dr. Tsai?
Yes. So I have some figures here. So 2 years ago, when we started to promote the EMI courses, we have about like 2,000 courses taught in English. And then last year, we have about 2,500 courses taught in English. And this year, we expect probably the number will grow up to like 3,000 courses taught in English. But how do we do this? It seems to be slowly growing up, just like most of the partner universities. So I think the key point is not really how many foreign teachers or foreign PIs we invited to the NTU, because we have about like 90 or 91 faculty members that hold the foreign passports. So actually they are foreigners. But it seems to be low because that's about like 5% of the whole faculty members. However, if we look at the faculty composition of NTU, so we have about 60% of the faculty member whose last degree was conducted in the English-speaking country. So basically, these 60% of the faculty member, they have the ability to teach in English if they want to. So we did a survey, CBE did a survey that about 52% of the faculty member, if you ask them, are you willing to change your teaching material? Are you willing to teach your subjects in English? So conduct your course in EMI. 52% of the faculty members, they are very willing to do that. Okay, so only about like 15, 20% of the faculty members, they say, no, I don't want to do that. You know, dealing with students are very easy or relatively easy. Dealing with faculty members are so tough. Faculty members are very stubborn. So in this case, it's really hard to push the faculty member to use English or to change what they were used to in the past 20 years. And also, sometimes faculty members, they might willing to participate in the EMI classes or EMI courses. However, they don't know how to do that. So what at NTU, what we do work together with CBE is that we also provide the support, the backup for those faculty members who wants to change or participate in the EMI courses. For example, if they don't know how to do that, then people from CBE, people from the Teacher and Learning Development Center, we have a team, then we can go into their class to see how the class is going to be if we want to change everything into English. Is there any teaching material you need to think about, and how you evaluate the students, to see how they learn by evaluating. So what kind of parameters you need to put in. So by this, and we will be able to persuade more faculty members. So not just I'm telling you you need to do that. Of course, we also have some extra reward financially as an initiative. So you are willing to do that, but also we help you to do that. You are not alone. I think this is how the NTU and CBE works to promote more courses to be conducted in English at the NTU.
Yes. So first, I want to echo Lou about like who should be eligible EMI teachers, because I want to talk about the stereotypes at first. Because when we ask teachers, we want more EMI courses, and they think who should be teaching that? Okay, maybe from the young one. Like we are too old to change. I don't want to change anymore because we ask our teachers to use like SDGs, the SR, like so many new innovations, and now another EMI, okay, so, and also they have the stereotype like, okay, should be those faculty with international PhD degrees. And at TMU, because in our context, in our culture, our professors, the majority of them, when they graduate, they pass the national board exam, they go directly to become doctors, surgeon, medical practitioners. Okay, so not really a lot of with international degrees. And based on our observation and our data, our evidence, actually those who earn like higher student like evaluation scores are not those with international degrees. And also, so and I want to share a number. Like at NTU, at TMU, sorry, at TMU, more than 50% of our teachers, they had EMI teaching experiences. Okay, so that's something different. It's not they are eligible or not, but are they willing to do the change or not? And so that's why we encourage, we support them. Okay, maybe try 6 weeks. And also in terms of a student, I want to make it really quick because I saw that. Okay, so for students, definitely, I totally agree with like not just the EGP or try to like get B2 or the C1 because then that will be the washback effect. They just, you know, like learn to learn English. Okay, so we do a lot of emphasis on the EAP and also ESP for their future job workplace literacy. To like they feel, oh, English is really useful and that will help me in the future. Okay, yes.
Thank you. And I have a tiny little follow-up for this round of questions for Miller. Sorry, it's for Martin. So from your experiences, do you think that the planning for the faculty and for the students should go hand in hand instead of going in parallel? Because a lot of time, our enhancement or development services is provided for faculties, and then student activities, maybe EAP, ESP, but somehow they're not connected as tightly as intended. And what's your suggestion on this? How can we tie them together to go hand in hand?
I think that comes down to, again, a cultural change.
Right.
Faculty need to understand and students need to understand that at a certain point they are equal partners in this project. I gave an example earlier of the Global Temple Conference, where it's not just faculty who are invited to give presentations, but we're inviting the students to give the presentations. It's not the language. It is the fact that they're both learners in the same institution. I like the idea that Professor Sai said earlier, I think it was brainwashing. So yes, you have to brainwash the students. You have to brainwash the faculty. And then again, going back to it is a change in the culture. They are equal partners. And so if you give them opportunities to be equal partners. And then also Professor Liu said, showing, don't tell, right? So show them the benefits. Right. Don't just tell them, but show them. Give them data. Again, both faculty and students. Yeah. So they're equal.
I was reminded with the time. So if I may, maybe I should open the floor, open for questions. If we have any questions from the floor, both for Martin, Dr. Miller, or for our faculty members here on the stage, or anything about the EMI implementation from your experiences from your institutions, will be more than welcome to take questions.
I'm Choi. I'm from Department of Geography. I'm doing EMI for probably 3-4 years. I think the major challenge I have now is, I think for Temple University, the reason you do this because English is the only way you can communicate with people from different countries. But in my class, we know the best tool is Chinese to learn. So sometimes I feel like it's about the necessity of using English as the tool, because so in many classes, so students say, I barely be able to understand even in Chinese. Now I try to make it in English. So, but the things actually a little bit change. Once we have, in the past 2 years, we have international students in my class, then English become the only tool we can communicate with everybody. So I don't know. So for your opinion, like for example, if this is in Temple University, so everybody need to learn economics, teaching economics, but you enforce the faculty and everybody using Chinese, that would not be necessary because we know English is the best tool in your university to teach economics, right? So how you do that in Taiwan? So when Chinese is still the best tool for students to understand that. And also for students, they feel like I'm here to learn, for example, calculus. I'm not here to learn English. And then the other thing is, I think that's part of the education we have. Like in Taiwan, it's like even we are learning a lot of classes when we are in the junior high or even in the elementary school. They are learning a lot of class, not just English, but they using English as a tool. But for the cram school, they still feel I'm learning English. I'm not really learning the like a nutrition science or whatever that is. So could you give us some comments about this? Thank you.
I would actually agree with you very much that Chinese is probably the best tool to use to impart content. In fact, I think that there's a false premise in the EMI model that says 70% of the instruction must be in English and only 30% can be in Chinese. Why not 50-50? Who is to say that you must use only English? If your students are much more comfortable in Chinese about a certain concept, then don't be scared about explaining it in Chinese. There's a faculty member whose class I observed who actually encourages students to respond in Chinese, even though it's in an EMI classroom. She doesn't say speak Chinese in front of all the other students who don't speak Chinese, but she says when you interact with me, feel comfortable using Chinese. She gives assignments, and she says you can respond in your assignments in Chinese because she speaks Chinese. So again, it's a false premise that English is the only tool. As far as Temple is concerned, we have faculty, we have a large number of Chinese-speaking students on our campus. We have a large number of Chinese-speaking faculty. So what happens when they're in a Chinese-only class, in a seminar? They don't speak in English, they speak in Chinese. They're in the United States on a US campus. But again, I'll say for the third time, the false premise is that English is the only tool. It is a tool. Your goal in a geology class or a calculus class is to impart the geology knowledge or to impart the calculus knowledge. Use the tools you have. Don't force yourself into the box that the MOE program is giving you. You're still going to achieve EMI, if you will, because the EMI is just a tool, but not the only tool, and certainly not the only tool. Get rid of the fear. Get rid of that fear, yeah.
Can I add something? Yeah. So I have to say, you and me, I think all of us right here, we are actually kidnapped by our MOE. I should not say anything right now because it's actually video recording. But anyway, I think there is a very, very good idea, even in my campus. I always say something. I always just gather several different EMI teachers together. We always think about one thing. Should I feel guilty to speak Chinese in an EMI course? I have to say, who is the facilitator? Who is the key person in the classroom? Teacher and a student. So teacher should have the right to speak in any language they want. But it doesn't mean that EMI is fully in Chinese. That is a little bit weird, right? But let's think about this. Language should empower us. Because why we are pursuing bilingual education right now, because we want language to empower us so we can communicate internationally. So think about this. Chinese is one hand. For example, Chinese is our habitual hand, right hand. English can be the left hand. If I can do something like twist this bottle, I can only use one hand. It's pretty really weird, right? Why not both hands? So bilingual EMI is actually the actual goal for our island, I have to say, but it's my personal opinion. So anyway, bilingual EMI is the actual thing that we are pursuing right now, not monolingual EMI. Okay, so or full EMI. Full EMI may sound like a FOL, right? So don't do that. We are doing something like bilingual EMI. So there are several different strategies, like the trans-language strategy. If you do feel that your student cannot fully understand you when you are speaking in English for specific content or subject knowledge, switch back to the Chinese. You have the right, and you don't need to feel guilty. You should do this in Chinese, okay? Because we try to guarantee the learning outcome for our students. So why we are here, why we try to have this dialogue, because we should get together and really speak louder to our MOE to say, actually in the field, we are suffering from some issue. And we have very strong backup from Martyn that yes, language should be a part of the bilingual education, but not the only issue right here. So my personal experience would be, before the midterm test, normally, in the beginning of the course, we need to slow down. We can speak in English, but you need to slow down. Sometimes you use Chinese to help. For example, you can do the scaffolding. You can try to give the structure of today's content. Then you fill it in using the English. You find out that the students may learn very slowly in the beginning, but after the midterm test, something changed. It's actually be proved in lots of my class. After the midterm, they get used to English. Now you can increase your pass. Now students start to speak in English. But you don't actually blame on them that if you think in Chinese, if you discuss with your peers using Chinese, that is wrong because this is for EMI. I think that is so wrong. So I pick up your idea, and I think Martyn would agree with this point. So we need to let EMI to empower not only ourselves, but also our students. But this is not kind of a constraint or kind of the limitation or something. Yeah, thank you.
I would like to echo Dr. Lu's and Martyn's comments on this. So definitely, I think EMI or the language is actually an addition instead of a replacement of Chinese or mother language. So to be honest with you, my notes, my cue card today, mostly 80% in Chinese, actually. I just showed it to Martyn and said, oh, this is my cue cards. These are the questions I have. But somehow this is helping me, and I have a lot faster processing time. And I think I feel more comfortable if I see the keywords, in Mandarin, which is my mother language. And I can somehow, more comfortable in the settings. I know how to frame the sentence and all that. So I think that can also be one of the examples you can have. Not everything has to be in English, but this is really an addition. I can have some keywords in either languages, but that actually help with the communication. Okay, thank you very much. So any other questions, comments, or experiences? Yes.
Good morning. So this is Sandy from Wenzhou Ursuline University of Languages. And at Wenzhou, we offer a kind of program. And we also, in this very program, actually, we train teachers how to use EMI. And up to now, we have, I think we have perhaps more than 400 teachers have been there and receive the program. So here, I don't know whether it's a suggestion or question, but anyway, before they started the program, they need to fill in an application and tell what do they expect from the very program. And believe it or not, 1/5 of them will say that they are here actually not for the skill, they are here for language. They are, they are not confident in using English in their class. Okay, and here's the case. In the end of the program, they will have their demonstration. And believe it or not, to me, I do think that their teaching skill are pretty good, but their language, not very. Okay, so I have to say that they are telling the truth. They are not confident in their language skill. And it's true, they do need improvement in language, perhaps not really in pedagogical skills. After all, they have taught for so many years. I have to say that they are quite professional in their fields. And they are also quite professional in teaching the very area or the very course. So I do think that some of the teachers, they do need help in language. Yeah, here's my suggestion. Yeah, or also, what I have found. Thank you.
I want to go back to an earlier point, that language is simply the tool that they're using. And yes, absolutely, if they're not confident in English, then they cannot be in an EMI classroom, because the program does not recommend that they're doing 70% Chinese and 30% English. No. But if you can get to that 50-50 point, and I also have to disagree with you respectfully about the fact that all teachers, because they've taught for a long time, know how to teach. We have seen many, many faculty whose teaching gets worse and worse as they get older because they become too confident in their own skills and they forget that the student is an equal partner. Again, I said earlier, I've been teaching for 35 years, and as my years go on, I ask the students to be much more participating in the class because I learned that they are the teachers, not me. By the way, Wenzhou, one of our favorite students, is a Wenzhou graduate, so, and his English is absolutely perfect, so.
First, I want to echo, totally agree with that teachers. And because before we want to empower teachers, first we need to identify where are the obstacles and why they are not confident. And so many teachers, they told me, I think that's the issue of dual identity. Like when they enter EMI classrooms, they are not just content teachers anymore. They are also play the role as language teachers sometimes. So sometimes like before when they see students, their puppy eyes, they feel like, oh, okay, maybe my pedagogy is wrong, then I need to change. But now, when they, in EMI classroom, when they see those like problems or question or puzzle faces, they worry, is it because my pedagogy or is it because my English ability? Or maybe their English background, you know? So many uncertainties, so that's why they feel puzzled too. So I feel like to empower is not just like language or pedagogy, but also the mindset. Like before we just throw them, okay, go teach. Then don't just make them like sink or swim. You know, we need to just give them the vision, what to anticipate. Yeah, that's it.
Just a quick follow-up on that. So I would like to also show my appreciation for those teachers. They're actually willing to face their own needs. They know what they want, even though they might want to emphasize it's the language ability instead of the teaching part. But as long as they recognize that this is what they need, they want to improve overall classroom efficiency, I think that's something we should all appreciate. And from there, we can actually provide the help or the supports, whatever they need. So that will be my response to that. So for the interest of time, we can have one final quick questions or comments. If you have any, yes.
Hello, my name is Henry, and I'm a teaching assistant at the College of Pharmacy at Taipei Medical University. And as a teaching assistant, currently I help assist with the Introduction to Pharmaceutical Sciences, one of the elective EMI classes that we have in Taipei Medical University. And one interesting observation I found was that during our classes, you know, lectures, they're speaking in English, and we do encourage participation in class with the students. But we found often than not that although some of them are willing to participate, most of them usually stay silent in class. However, when the selected teacher selects the students, I found that, wow, like their English is actually really good, that they do have their own thoughts and opinions. So I actually do talk to them, just say like, yeah, your English is actually really good. Why don't you speak out more? And usually when I talk to those students, they said, well, I'm not really confident in how I speak. I'm afraid that someone will make fun of my accent. Maybe my question isn't that significant. So my question is usually, how do you provide advice to the students to pretty much improve or enhance their confidence in their English proficiency? Because I found that their English proficiency is actually pretty high, but their confidence is really low. So what would you say to promote the confidence in the students?
I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you a question. Were you thinking in Chinese and translating it to English? No. Okay. That's how you do it. You continue to encourage the students. You continue to compliment the students. You continue to give them opportunities to practice English in a real environment. The other thing is, as I was saying earlier, is change the teaching method. For students to be sitting in a classroom for 3 hours to be talked at, not talked with, but talked at, that's not going to encourage them to use any of their language skills, English or Chinese. So, and I know this is a huge shift in the concepts of teaching here, but I've said it 100 times and I'll say it 100 more times, make students an equal partner in the learning environment. I loved your metaphor of left and right hand. The students are the left hand, the teachers are the right hand. Together, they will be successful. Have more people like you, whose English is almost native, if not native, practice with them and show them that you are understanding them and that they are understanding you. Authentic environments and feedback, positive feedback. Don't tell them they're not speaking English well. Tell them how well they are speaking English. Even if it's not fluent, it's still English, and it still is successful, and you can still communicate with them. Because that's the end result, is that conversation. It's all about a conversation. So.
Right. Thank you very much.
Can I provide some? Yes. Yeah. So I want to, you can sit down, take your seat. I want to provide my response to both of the questions. I think both the questions actually the same question. Yeah, it's the same question. I think any teacher complaining or saying something about I am not confident to actually, talk for 2 or 3 hours fully in English to deliver all the content, that is simply because this teacher may not be aware of that the actual teaching or the effective teaching should come with the student engagement. So actually, think about this. Sometimes we say teaching English require my much more efforts for these kind of things. But actually, a good English class or a good EMI class, you don't really need to speak for 2 hours or 3 hours. If you really want let a student engage, it cannot happen by simply call someone out to say answer this question, answer that. Do you know the answer? That is useless. That is ineffective. You need to arrange, for example, 10 minutes or 15 minutes for students' small group discussion. Then ask one of them to give the answer. Then actually during the discussion, students can really engage about the topic that you're giving to them. So we did do a quick survey to our students. Think about this. Do you think you can answer teacher's question through English? Do you feel confident to do so? For example, 80% confidence. No one would raise their hand. But if we ask our student to think in another way, if I give you 10 minutes for the small group discussion, feel free to discuss in Chinese. You can gather the information or form some idea within this kind of discussion with maybe 3 or 4 classmates. Then do you think you can answer the question in English? Actually, 80% of the students would raise a hand. I mean, in the top university, not for every university, but for top university, actually our student has at least a B1 level, I have to say. But most of them can be B2. Not for academic purpose, but I think for the expression itself is good enough. So this kind of a pedagogy issue means we really need to allow our student to have the active learning, not simply listen. That is passive learning. So we need to change somehow. And it's also release our teacher's burden because we don't really need to speak for 2 hours. Actually, I only need to speak for 1 hour. The rest of 1 hour is more like the activity, discussion, response. So the key issue would be teacher need to think about which part of the content can be actually released. That means I don't really need to go through it. Students can read through it or learn it by themselves. But I need to spend the time of the class focusing on the critical points that I want them to learn in depth, I want them to discuss and provide their thoughts or feedback. So I think this kind of the strategy that maybe for TA, you may don't have the power to do so, but you may suggest your teacher, maybe you can allocate some time for their student, for his student, so they can actually discuss, and maybe they can provide some good answers from this.
Yeah, I would like to also share my personal experiences. So last year, I have this gigantic class in an auditorium, like this lecture hall. I have 100 students, and they're sitting down there. When they're trying to answer questions, they feel shy. Probably your case too. So my evaluation didn't go as good as I expected. But anyhow, so then I reflected my whole teaching, and I think, oh, is it because it's the wrong setting? So next year, when I'm offering the same class, I'm going to put them into a smaller classroom. They're going to be sitting in smaller tables, so they have neighbors. And so this kind of settings can probably help them to, first to elevate their, comfortableness. They feel more comfortable with the neighbors now. They're not strangers anymore. So they will feel more open up to speak up. So those kind of techniques might be helpful. Might not be directly to the content itself or language proficiency, but the settings might be also very important. That's my point of view. Yeah, thank you. So for the interest of time, let's give a round of applause for all our panelists and everybody in this room. Thank you.